Every so often, when I do reality checks, I realise I might have bitten off a bit more than I can chew. Certainly, that's the case with the Stewart Smith Raja Jackson scenario. Now, for those that aren't aware of the situation, the son of Quinton Rampage Jackson, Raja Jackson, was involved in a criminal assault. And let's not mix bones about this. That's exactly what it was, against a professional wrestler in the ring. Now, to do this justice would require a much more substantial video, and I'll probably do one later on. Certainly, this story is unfolding, and there are bits and pieces coming to the light, and I'm sure there'll be some charges coming down the line for it as well. But in essence, what we have is a situation that started as one thing and very, very quickly became something else. Now, one of the more interesting things is that this has done a sort of split in the online community. Now, of course, the online community is always going to have its opinions on anything. If you say up, there's always going to be at least 3% of the people that will say it's down. But in this case, the majority of people are falling on the, my opinion, probably correct side, which is this was a legitimate, unsolicited and felonious assault on the part of Raja. But there are still those that are trying to justify or at least mitigate or explain the actions by what happened earlier on. So we'll go over that in a little bit of detail. To start off with, Raja and Stewart Smith, Psycho Stew, as he goes by in the ring, were having a confrontation, and I use the word loosely, in an alleyway where there was some barbecuing and some cameras rolling and some things going on. Now, I've always been a fan of professional wrestling, and I remain a fan of professional wrestling. It's something I've been watching since I was a child, and the art form of professional wrestling is something I have a lot of respect for. In fact, I'm friends with several professional wrestlers. One of the things I did for the video, because I like to do due diligence and research, is I seek out people that have expert opinions on things. And I spoke to a very, very good friend of mine, Johnny Devine, who was a professional wrestler at a very high level and of a very high standard. Now, straight away, I said to him, was that a working shot in your opinion? He said, of course it was a working shot. Just look at the way it goes. And he's absolutely right. First things first, if you are having I'm Psycho Stew, don't you know who I am? And the whole thing is cartoonishly and very exaggeratedly set up for the showdown that was inevitable at the end of it. Professional wrestling is a form of base theatre. They're very big in their statements and big in their expressions and big in their emotions when they're expressing things, because that's how they set up the action in a ring. Predetermined is accurate. Fake, not so much, because although they're not trying to really lay the shots in and hurt each other, there's a lot of bumps, bruises, bangs, and injuries that you'll get in a professional wrestling ring, ironically more than you get in the actual fight game, simply because it's a lot harder to fake it than it is to do it for real, as we've found out in the video with Mr. Smith and Mr. Jackson. But what's important to look at is how he delivers the shot. First things first, if you're going to assault someone, you don't tend to line them up with a hand and do the big wind up as you do it. You also don't tend to check the implements of your assault first. Now, I have one I prepared earlier on today, this rather delicious can of Darkling Oatmeal Stout. So if I'm going to deliver a strike and an impact with this, I'm going like this, because that's relatively solid. Or I'm going to come in with a top end and hook it like that. What I'm not going to do is I'm going to hit you with the side of the can, because there's no impact there at all. In professional wrestling terms, it looks spectacular because you get the big wind up, the big hit, and the explosion of whatever material is actually contained within the can. As I said, in this instance, it's a rather delicious oatmeal stout. You'll just forgive me if I open that can for just a second. So while I'm pouring this out, this is just to illustrate a point. Because even with an empty can, such as I'm going to create in a few moments, there we go. A little fizzy, a little bit of a head on that. Just top it off. But even with an empty can, you've still got a much more substantial impact from the base or the top of the can than you do from the side. So let's take a look at what went on here. This is now an empty can. Just to confirm, absolutely delicious. If I deliver an impact like that, you can see you get a bit of a sting on that. And obviously you get the same if I was going from the top of the can, because this takes a tremendous amount of impact. It's the equivalent of standing on an egg. An egg takes a lot of the top and the bottom, very little from the sides. So if I am going to hit you and assault you feloniously with a tin, it's going to be bang. What I'm not going to do is this, and just bang the side of it in, because you just simply end up with a dent in the can. Now, if this does contain liquid or water, when you go bang like that, what is left in is going to spray at the top and create that spectacular illusion. This shouldn't be rocket science, but clearly it needs to be explained to some people. So this wrestler thought that this was a setup for, something going on later on, and he acted in a working way. And you can tell by his reaction afterwards, which is, "You're not going to sell it?" And the guy was like, "No, what the fuck was that?" Which is the telling point when Mr. Smith's now thinking, "Ah, crap, I just hit someone that's not involved with the show." And he then goes to start to make the apologies and things, which is obviously then, it starts to get a little heated and a little agitated. Thankfully, cooler heads prevail with the wrestlers there. They separate them and they start to get them talking. Now, at this point, it's important to recognize Raja hasn't done anything wrong yet. He was just there in the background, thought he was hanging out, and he got hit with a working shot, but he isn't to know that. He doesn't know the game. He doesn't know the industry. So had he responded at this juncture, we would be looking at potentially a claim of self-defense that would have legs to it, because it's not like he said, "Yeah, we're working and here we go." The fact he didn't is removing any claim of self-defense subsequent, because you can't remove that much time from a situation and then act on it and claim self-defense. There are specific scenarios where there are exceptions to that. Typically in protracted and extended domestic situations, you'll sometimes find that defense will be permissible, not because of the direct action itself, but from the accumulation of incidents and things. But in this one, he didn't. They were separated, and, which is the important part, an apology was proffered 3 times, I believe, by Stewart to Raja. He said, "I'm really sorry, man. I thought we were working. My bad. Absolutely my bad. I don't know about that." This should have been the end of it, especially because Raja accepted the apology. This is a very important piece to take note of. If he hadn't have accepted the apology, if he hadn't have said, "Yeah, you know what, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine," then I suspect the outcome would have been remarkably different, because there is no way that Stewart would have entrusted his well-being to Raja. The promoter then steps in, or acting on behalf of the promoter, which is KnockX Productions. And when I do a longer video, I'll get more into this, but they're absolutely holding a level of responsibility and accountability for this as well. It's disgraceful that a professional wrestling promotion will actually allow a non-trained wrestler into the ring without at least a modicum of preparation. You shouldn't really let anybody go in the ring, even as a run-in or as a distraction or a bell ringer, without being aware of what that entails and the nature of the show. Like I said before, it is predetermined, but there's a lot of stuff can go wrong in a pro wrestling ring. But Raja agrees to make this part of the show, to get like revenge, as you call it, or get his receipt as one of the other workers that really needs remonstrations and probably holds a level of culpability for winding him up, kept saying. And Raja was good with this, and you can see Stewart was good with this as well. They made a suggestion right in front of both of them. "We'll go in, we'll do some work, and off you go." From what we can establish from a phone call later on, the agreement was do a double leg takedown, fake a couple of punches, that'll be it. You've got your run in, little bit of thing, we'll make it a part of the show and grow. Smaller indie promotions are notoriously bad for trying to get a little bit of rub off celebrities. If they can get someone in that's an ex-WWE star or has got any claim to fame, they will do so to get a little bit of a rub and a little bit of promo. And that's exactly what was going on here. A small promotion was trying to get a flex off a lesser known, but still, obviously connected MMA star by virtue of who he is and connections to his dad. Raja at this point is starting to get wound up, not only by the other workers, but also by the online chat people, and saying, it's fake, and all that sort of thing too. And you can see Raja's behavior afterwards, like saying, everyone's saying that I'm a bitch and all this. I ain't a bitch. Well, it's an interesting claim to make when your actions are kind of not exactly the most direct ones that you can take. So if by saying you don't want to be seen as a bitch, maybe don't do things which will then open you up to that level of criticism, would be a suggestion I would put into your life to fold going forwards. When he goes into the ring, he's actually heard on camera basically saying, "I'm going to go and do this guy now," which is, again, not a good thing when it comes to making a claim of it was something that went wrong or claiming self-defense later on. He gets into the ring and he grabs hold of Stewart, and Stewart goes up with it because he thinks this is still, here's my double leg takedown, get the punches in, this will be a good end to the show. Hand goes in the air, crowd go home happy. What you see instead is Raja takes him up, does the turn, adjusts him, And you can see Stewart's actually going up voluntarily and he's preparing to go down and do his back bump, as all professional wrestlers are trained to do. What he's telling here is Raja adjusts and he drives him down. MMA fighter or not, skilled practitioner or not, if someone as big as Stewart does not want to go up, you ain't getting him up. It just is not going to happen. So when he goes up voluntarily, he's allowing him to take his weight, lift him up, and he's trusting him to put him down safely. The paradox of professional wrestling is you are putting a tremendous amount of trust in someone to not hurt you. Because even though it's predetermined, there is a lot of opportunity for someone to take a liberty, put a potato shot in, or do damage to you. And really, you're surrendering up all control to do anything back at that moment for the sake of the performance and of the show. And Raja absolutely betrays and destroys the trust and the agreement that they had prior to that. He doesn't do a double leg. He does a slam takedown. And you can see Stewart's head bounces off the back of the canvas. In and of itself, this probably would have constituted an assault at a simple level. But you could almost allow for wiggle room because he's not a trained professional wrestler, which again is on the promotion. Shame on them for putting him in the ring in the first place. But because it's just a single technique. So he puts him down, the bump went wrong. It happens all the time. Even the safest and most professional and highly trained of wrestlers, they're going to go down and occasionally take a bad bump. What isn't excusable or isn't explainable within the context of going wrong is that he then throws 20 plus non-working punches, as in they are shoot punches, they are real punches, they are stiff punches, and he is trying to hurt him. And he succeeds. And he's already unconscious. This is not something that you can justify. You can't. You can try, and you can be one of those people that says, should have hit him with a beer can earlier on and all that sort of thing. This was 30 minutes prior to this taking place. If it was that much of an issue, don't take the apology, don't shake his hand, don't agree to work with him and trade safely, and don't talk to the promoter about what you're going to do and then do something else. For someone that is very, very concerned about not appearing to be a bitch, you're doing things which are clearly bitch moves, which is betraying a trust, being dishonest in what you're doing when accepting an apology, making an agreement you then intend to break, and taking an advantage of someone that's trusting you not to hurt them. Further to that, you're then punching an unconscious man over and over and over again. This is ego, machismo, and pride at its most dangerous. Nothing can justify that from what we have in the lead up to it. Even the working shot upside the head, no injuries, no damage, no movement. He didn't even move him when he made contact with it. That's why the cell kind of surprised, or lack thereof rather surprised Stewart, because he's a big dude. And if he'd have meant to hit you, I don't care how big or tough you are, a guy that big swings a can and actually hits you with it, you'll move, you'll clutch your head. The fact he didn't, and he wasn't injured, and nothing happened as a result of that, shows how light that shot actually was. When you lose control of your emotions to that extent, you really are going to have a hard time explaining that. What possible justification can you have to say, well, I put him down as hard as I could and then punched him in the head 22 times? You can't then start saying he shouldn't have hit me in the head with a beer can. Whether you take the moral stance that that's admissible, and if you do, I would suggest you might want to reassess your moral scale. The ethical standards certainly not being met, not within the MMA industry, not within the professional wrestling industry, and certainly not within polite society. The legal is where we've got a way, way bigger hurdle for him to overcome here, because there is no possible justification for this action. The other wrestlers come in the ring thinking this is still part of the work, and I have to really put some effort in to hold Raja back. They start to do so when even does a shutdown on the arms, puts him into the corner, and he's still trying to fight them as well. So not only was he out of control with the guy he was angry with, he's now out of control full stop. This is not someone that should be in an MMA ring. This is someone that needs to be in anger management and needs to be in some severe counselling, because clearly he has a lot of issues which remain unresolved. From a legal perspective, he's got a lot of problems, and he's probably going to be toast, because he's not just gone a little bit in, he's unanswered punches over and over and over again, wouldn't let himself get pulled off and start trying to fight everyone else as well, and basically confessed on camera that he decided he was going to lay that in, having already been on camera agreeing to work with a guy. You can't get much more cut and dry than that sort of situation. And with this being all over the internet, that video is not going to go anywhere. Trying to find unaltered footage of this is actually something of a quest in and of itself, because every man and their dog has now got a copy of it out there. One of the reasons I'm putting this short video out is because I want to get the insights and what I see from this up front immediately before we do a longer version of it. One of the things I'm very quick on to point out is the lack of control we have here. And that speaks to the reality check mindset. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And is it necessary to do so? He could have double legged him, maybe give him a little cheeky potato, and then just still done the rest out. And maybe it would have been, just one of them things. Certain wrestlers like it to work a little snug. What they don't like to be doing is pummeled into unconsciousness and put in a hospital. As of the recording of this video, Mr. Smith seems to be okay, and that's a good thing that's at least coming out of that. Prayers for his recovery. For what I can tell, he's actually a veteran who uses professional wrestling as a way to cope with his PTSD and, express that darker part within him as a performance art. I know some people do that with acting, and some people find other arts, and professional wrestling is an art as much as anything else is. So it's doubly sad that the trust he put in someone is betrayed, and is going to probably require some substantial healing. With regards to what happens to Raja, I suspect that we may be looking at jail time. Certainly, we're going to be looking at an arrest and a charge, and I can't see him not getting a conviction on this, really and truly. Justice systems never cease to amaze me. There's always going to be something that's going to go on whereby they will take a stance that you didn't see coming out of left field. And this is not one of those cases where I think that's going to happen. There's a lot of high profile on this. Rampage has come out and said, I don't condone my son's actions. He shouldn't have been in the ring in the first place. He was suffering from a concussion from sparring. And Rampage, he isn't necessarily trying to excuse what his son did. He's just trying to come up with reasons as to why it may have happened. Now, even if they are true, it doesn't excuse it. And Rampage, at least in his defense, does say, my primary thoughts are with Mr. Smith and I hope he recovers. That's laudable that he's at least recognising that, even though he's still trying to mitigate the actions of his son. I get it. That's a father's actions too. Some things just can't be mitigated, though. And the best example you can perhaps set to your son, and you're in a similar situation with family members, is to just say, son, this is going to be a bumpy ride. I'm here with you, but we need to man up and admit what we did here. This isn't going to go away anytime soon. And as I said, this was supposed to be a short video. It's already gone longer than I intended. But I think there's a lot that needs to get out from this. And I'm very interested in your own thoughts on this in the comment section. Do you think that perhaps he was provoked into doing this in an incident with a work punch and an empty can 30 minutes earlier that he accepted an apology for? Or do you think that this was, as I think most of us are seeing, a deliberate criminal assault that should be remonstrated with? Perhaps the lesson is, don't hit people with cans, and the best thing to do with a can is pour yourself a delicious cold pint. I will see you at the next reality check, guys. Thank you for bearing with me on this one, and have yourselves a good night. Cheers.